Excuse me, Your Worship, you're live whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. All right, Council, it's 5 o'clock. Time to get down to business. I will call this meeting to order. Today, we acknowledge that Collingwood is located on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, including the traditional lands of the Anishinaabek, the Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe peoples, and on lands connected with the Lake Simcoe Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818. This is the home of a diverse range of Indigenous peoples whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors to our society. And with that, I will look for a motion to adopt the agenda, and the motion reads that the content of the council agenda for April 19, 2021 be adopted as amended. And we have added item 14.1, additional reasons for the in-camera session. I will look for a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Hamlin, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Council, any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest involving today's agenda? Seeing none, if you find yourself in that position as we progress through, please let us know and the general nature thereof. Adoption of the minutes. 4.1, the resolution is that the minutes of the regular council meeting held March 22nd, 2021, and the special council meeting, round bracket Collingwood Judicial Inquiry Virtual Town Hall and bracket held on April 7, 2021 be approved as presented. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor McLeod and seconded by Councillor Doherty. Are there any errors or omissions, Council, in any of the minutes? Seeing none, I will call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Is there any business arising from the previous minutes, Council? All right, I don't see any. And that brings us to community announcements. And before we get started on community announcements today, we had an unfortunate altercation last week that resulted in some social media presence. And I'd just like to have Acting Executive Director Dean Culver take us through the actions and the events. We had posted a message to the residents of Collingwood on our social media. We subsequently took that down as additional circumstances came to light. So I just ask Executive Director Culver to please take us through that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so on Monday evening and Tuesday morning, we began receiving links, comments and links to a TikTok video that was being circulated and referencing an altercation at Sunset Point. Because it was on town property and because of the conversations surrounding Sunset Point last year and as we head into this summer, and because the town has taken a position on with council's endorsement, taking a position on bias and racism and trying to form the community that we all want to live in. It was recommended that an open letter be issued. This was difficult because typically the town would not wade into the social media sphere, especially where third-party outputs are concerned, because there are obvious challenges in that. But the pressure was strong enough from the public who were witnessing this video that we took the step, put the open letter out. Shortly after the open letter was posted, we began receiving information that the picture depicted in the video was not complete and that there were alternate versions of the encounter. And it quickly became apparent also that potentially we were participating or empowering people to involve in counterbullying, which was not the intention. The letter itself was intended to simply use the video as a reference point for us to have a an opportunity to reinforce the town's position on diversity and inclusion. However, it was turning into the town becoming involved in a debate between parties, and that's not, that wasn't the intent. Also with an understanding in this day and age that social media can be severely damaging, that mental health crises are apparent everywhere, that division is rampant within our community, that we felt that we needed to take the letter down in order to make sure that we weren't further aiding in division. We stand by the message that racism, bias, people treating anyone of any color or any ethnic background badly is not welcome or wanted in Collingwood, regardless of justifications. Having said that, it was a learning for us about where and when to be involved in conversations, and certainly will inform us going forward. In addition to taking the letter down, staff have begun working on programs that we expected to press forward with in any case, but we will be expediting these programs to generate more messages of acceptance and inclusion and campaigning to ensure and recognize that diversity is welcome in Collingwood. So that's my explanation, if I could leave it there.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Dean. And certainly the intent of the letter that was posted on Friday was to a message to all our residents. We've had a difficult year and we have learned a lot during the course of this year. And we in this community and this council around this table have undertaken diversity and inclusion measures. Racism, bigotry, bias in any form is not tolerated. And we are looking to the residents of Collingwood to be open and inclusive as we move forward. We're all looking forward to the summer, and we know that eventually we will get out, and we need to be inclusive and welcoming in our messaging and in our actions with our residents and with our visitors. And with that being said, we'll go around the table for community announcements. Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you. I have nothing this evening.
Councillor McLeod.
Well, I have two things, so I'll take one of Deputy Mayor Hall's. I was out for a bike ride the other day and happened to end up in the Arboretum, and I just want to say good job to our poet laureate Claudia Ferraro for the display, etc. Of used books, repurposed books, and original poetry that has been hung in the Arboretum, and I just think it's delightful, and as a big fan of the spoken word, really quite lovely. And I would encourage anyone who has an opportunity to get down to the Arboretum to go have a look at that display. It's inspiring. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the awesome people who have been doing the actual work in the last little while of bending over and picking up crap. And I mean all of the meanings of the word along our trails. And I've seen people plogging, which if you don't know that phrase means walking or jogging with a garbage bag in their hand and picking up stuff. And it has been great. And I know we all received an email from someone who was rather incensed about an area that had not been cleaned up. And then I saw that very person in a Facebook group organizing or being part of an organized pick some stuff up kind of endeavor. And I just want to tell all those people who are organizing on Facebook or wherever and showing up and doing the work and the actual work of picking up on behalf of their neighbors that I see you and I salute you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. And as we get closer to Earth Day, our usual cleanup will not be happening this year, but we certainly invite everybody to do it. What was the term, Councillor McLeod? Clogging? Plogging?
Plogging is
Plogging.
Plogging. Yeah.
So we certainly encourage everyone to get out and plog while social distancing. So thank you for that. Councillor Comey.
Thank you. Well, in the spirit of thanking staff, I'd like to recognize and thank, I would take it, our Parks and Recreation and Communications staff for their quick turnaround on the on-again, off-again use of playgrounds that we all experienced over the weekend. So thank you. I'm sure it was a hectic and exhausting weekend for all of our staff with all the changes. I think it'd be nice for our community to recognize all of our teachers and administrators and families who once again have their children of all ages at home trying to remote learn while they themselves are juggling various schedules and work life demands. I think it'd also be great for our community to recognize that, of course, vaccines are ever changing, but our recent news is that our province has graciously allowed those 40 and up to go find a jab. So if you are in that category, I hope you're taking the time to register wherever you can. They are open to you province-wide. So if you can find an opening, take one. And then I guess in response to Director Culver's comments and in our spirit of anti-racism sentiment, I've mentioned this quote from Dr. King before, but you know, I'm drawn to it again. And I'll close with, there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular. But he must take it because conscience tells him it is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Comey. And just so people are aware, our YMCA continues to offer emergency care. So for those essential workers that need caregiving arrangements, they can please contact the YMCA about those programs. And they are taking some registrations for this summer camps, in hopes that we will be able to access those when the time comes. Councillor Madigan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson. To reflect on what Councillor McLeod said, I too was out for a bike ride. Unfortunately, I didn't get the greatest experience that she did. I was biking along yesterday, and next thing I knew, I was scraping along the ground after I was hit. So I'm a little bit out of it today. And that being said, just a quick reminder to everybody to maybe put your phones down and not text and drive. Or if you're going to aim at your least favorite counselor, at least finish the job next time rather than just kind of hitting my wing. So if I'm a bit out of it tonight, I apologize. Hence, that's why I really couldn't get a tie done up. It took everything just to get this jacket on. So hopefully we'll have a good night ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Madigan. Take care of that wing. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I guess I'll also pick up on the cycling theme that we seem to have running today. Congratulations to the Collingwood who have launched a cycling initiative. The challenge to everyone in town is to ride your bicycle every day for the month of April. So today is April 19th. We're just a little bit halfway through the month. So there's still time to jump on. I will say that I have been able to cycle for 17 days out of 19 so far. And the 2 days that I didn't cycle, the weather was awful nasty, but I didn't take my car. I just didn't go out. So it can be done. It feels great, and it's awful good for the environment and our active transportation. So just a little reminder, and that's it for me, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. And I too have been riding my bike, not as much as Councillor Doherty, but I've been out on it. And it's a great way to get around town. And as long as you get there safely, it's worth a cup of coffee as well, I think. So, so good for the health as well. Councillor Berman.
Nothing for me today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey.
Nothing this evening, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you. I wanted to mention that on Saturday, April 4th, because coming Saturday, it's the 102nd anniversary of the passage of a piece of Ontario legislation that allowed women to run for provincial and municipal governments. It took decades, as you can imagine, for that to get in place. And although many women ran for the provincial parliament in the year following the enactment of that legislation. It took 24 years for the first woman MPP to be elected, and then many more years. And in fact, it was 1971, which was the first time we had 2 women in the provincial legislature. You might remember Margaret Birch and Margaret Scrivener. And the road for non-white women in Ontario politics has been even harder. The first racialized woman was elected in 1990 when Zanana Akande won her seat to become the first Black female MPP. And what about on the municipal side? So as I mentioned, it was 1919 when this legislation came in. It's not known how many women ran in 1920, but there was 1 elected in the province of Ontario in the city of Toronto. And an article in the Toronto Star noted, Hamilton, this is Constant Hamilton, won, and on January 12, 1920, made history as she was officially sworn in. But not a single camera was there to record it as Hamilton took her seat in the ornate, richly paneled City Council chamber. The event was not even mentioned in Mayor Tommy Church's inaugural speech, and it received scant attention in the daily press. Changes happened really not so long ago, and I'm very proud to sit on this council in a community that saw fit to elect a majority of women to sit at the table for the first time 2 years ago. And although we still have a long way to go to get equal and equitable representation at the provincial and municipal level, we have to remember and give thanks, and I will be on this coming Saturday, to those suffragettes, as they were known, that paved the way for us to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hamlin. Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to very briefly comment on the kind words expressed by Councillor Hamlin. I have 2 beautiful nieces in Waterloo. They would be ages 17 and 15, and their great aunt on their mother's side was Agnes MacPhail, and Agnes was the first woman MP elected in the province of Ontario.
Was there a family resemblance, Deputy Mayor?
Fortunately, no. I don't wish my appearance or looks on anyone. So, and for those who are interested, the origins go back to the Owen Sound or the Grey County area. So anyway.
Thank you for that. And I would like to acknowledge that in our theme of giving thanks today, that today, this week is actually National Volunteer Week. And the theme this year is the value of one, the power of many. And it reflects the awe-inspiring and wonderful acts of kindness that we have seen throughout our community over the past year, which has been a difficult one. And that the magic happens when we work together towards a common purpose. And we've seen many people throughout our community supporting family, friends, neighbors, and strangers, and including people standing up to systemic racism. So I want to thank all of the great volunteers in our community. It's part of our DNA. It's one of the things that makes Collingwood such a spectacular place. And we rely very heavily on our volunteers here at Town Hall. So thank you to all our committee members, our task force members, and standing committee members who have served us over the year. We have benefited greatly from their volunteerism and their expertise, as well as throughout our community in the arts and culture and in sports and service groups. We just have such a powerful network of volunteers in our community that really elevate us, and they have shown us the power, the value of one and the power of many over the past year. So thank you to all our volunteers. That being said, I'm now going to introduce for deputations our first deputation, which is from the hospital redevelopment update. We have hospital president and CEO Norah Holder here. And speaking of volunteerism, we have Lesley Paul, who is board chair and who I believe has served on the hospital board for 6 years now. And it's been a heavy lifting 6 years. And given the recent announcement in the 2021 capital budget, we have some good news. So I will welcome Lesley and Norah. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you for having us. My name is Lesley Paul, and I am the chair of the board at the Collingwood General and Marine Hospital. This is my first year in the chair position, but I have spent the past 7 years on the board of trustees as vice chair of governance, as vice chair, chair of governance and the quality committees, as well as chair of the board community engagement committee, also known as the Municipal Advisory Forum. At this time, I would like to introduce Norah Holder, President and CEO of the Collingwood General and Marine Hospital, a position that she has held for the past 4 years, with 8 previous years working in a vice president position overseeing the patient experience portfolio. We would like to thank everyone for inviting us to speak with you tonight. And over the next 10 minutes, we will be sharing some information with you about the Collingwood General and Marine Hospital's ongoing response to the ever-changing COVID-19 pandemic. So we'll change to the next slide and I'll invite Norah.
Thank you, Lesley. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to talk about how some of our numbers have changed from the year leading up to the pandemic. Heading into the pandemic, CGMH had a roster of 550 employees and a total of 101 physicians, midwives, and dentists with hospital privileges. However, since the beginning of the pandemic, the total number of CGMH employees has grown from 568 to 661. And that represents an 18% increase in the number of employees. These frontline roles are across the board, but nursing and environmental services are 2 of the top recruitment groups and investments that we've made. Our last volunteer count was 422 individuals, and we look forward to the day we can safely welcome our volunteers back on site again. Additionally, this week is currently National Volunteer Week, so we'd like to thank all of our volunteers who are staying safe at home right now. Prior to the COVID pandemic, there were more than 36,500 visits to our hospital's emergency department annually. This number is substantial in terms of the number of annual visits our emergency department was built for. Importantly, the volume of visits continues to grow each year. While we do know our ED visits were less in 2020-21, what we experienced and continue to experience is seeing patients coming to our emergency department with more serious illnesses. We know people have been ignoring or living with symptoms of illness for too long, and as a result, are coming to the hospital more ill. Influenza and colds, though, were almost non-existent this winter due to public health measures such as masking, hand washing, and distancing. So we continue to communicate to our community members the hospital's emergency department remains open for business and is a safe space to come to. More than 475 births occurred in 2019-20. So as you can see, South Georgian Bay remains a destination for young families. And we continue to see an increase in mental health clinic visits with more than 15,000 in the year prior to the pandemic start. We continue to collaborate with many partners and engage in new community initiatives to help provide the right resources to those who need them, such as the Mental Health Response Unit, which has been a tremendous success in the community, has expanded services to 7 days a week, and is greatly needed in relation to COVID. Surgical services has gone through unprecedented times, never seen in my career, with a ramp down of elective and non-emergent surgeries, not once, but twice within 1 year. The full impact of this is not yet known, but it's anticipated we are looking at elective surgery delays of 18 to 24 months province-wide. And we are preparing for an increase in cancer cases due to delays in seeking and providing treatments that pertain to the COVID-19 pandemic and surge. At this time, CGMH is currently funded for and operates 74 inpatient beds, but we're often running at overcapacity levels, filling 77 or more inpatient beds. And additionally, the hospital has opened an 18-bed alternative health facility at the Collingwood Legion, which continues to operate daily. We're very grateful to the town of Collingwood for their commitment of $100,000 and a used generator that will permanently be placed at the Collingwood Legion as a part of future planning, for emergency relief efforts. So we'll move to the next slide, please, and thank you. And Lesley, it's over to you.
Thank you, Norah. So over the past year and into the current year of 2021, our focus remains on 4 key projects: the Care For project, our Ontario Health Team Planning, accreditation, and of course, redevelopment. Our Care For project, the Collingwood General and Marine Hospital, in partnership with the Georgian Bay General Hospital, Headwaters Healthcare Centre, and Royal Victoria Regional Health Centre, have partnered to implement the latest version of a shared health information system platform called Meditech Expanse. This transformational project, which has been named Care For, is designed to improve the quality of care, patient care, and the delivery of that care throughout the 4 partner hospitals. This is one of the largest and most exciting projects in our collective history. It will positively impact several hundred clinical and operation workflows across the continuum of care, ultimately providing safer, high-quality care to the residents of the regions that we serve. And we are currently very excited and working towards a go-live date of mid-September. Next slide, please. The South Georgian Bay Ontario Health Team, now formally approved, is comprised of 11 anchor organizations locally together to create a healthcare system that is designed for patients, families, caregivers, and providers to meet the needs of our specific South Georgian Bay community. In recent months, the group has established shared goals and priorities, worked on various community partnerships, such as the home monitoring program, and recently launched a website at southgeorgianbayoht.ca. Next slide, please. A big project occurring every 4 years is accreditation planning. CGMH engages in this accreditation process with Accreditation Canada, where every program, process, and department is inspected to ensure that the hospital is consistently incorporating high-quality care measures. In 2022, CGMH is aspiring to replicate the hospital's 2017 success of accredited with exemplary standing, a decision awarded by Accreditation Canada to organizations which have achieved 95% or more of the high priority and other criteria in each grouping and have met all required organizational practice tests for compliance during the on-site survey. It's a really big job. I can attest to that. Next slide, please. And of course, the burning question in regards to redevelopment work. CGMH is very pleased to be listed within the provincial budget and again within the recent Infrastructure Ontario P3 market update. At this time, unfortunately, it's too early to speculate on details, and we are eagerly anticipating a letter from the Ministry of Health with additional details, including our next steps and clarification for the scope of our project. We expect to receive more details about what this announcement means for the South Georgian Bay region, but for the foreseeable near future, the hospital's focus remains on wave 3 of the COVID-19 pandemic, inclusive of the directions to ramp down elective surgeries and procedures, and managing the changing priorities issued under the province's emergency order that seem to change from day to day. And lastly, CGMH is currently in the process of working through a refresh of its current strategic plan as it works to form new goals under its current strategic framework of our people, patient experience, innovation, and partnerships. Next slide, and I'll turn it over to Norah.
Thanks, Lesley. Let's make sure I got my mic on. Yes, I do. Okay, good. And while we continue to move forward with these 4 key projects, hospitals across Ontario are seeing the tremendous effect and pressure from wave 3 of COVID-19. With the high volume of very ill COVID patients in critical care units and in acute care inpatient settings, hospitals are experiencing very challenging capacity issues. CGMH is supporting in any way that we can, and this includes our accepting patient transfers from other hospitals. To date, we've received 7 patients from other hospitals to assist with provincial and regional patient load balancing, and are working through and progressing through 4 at this time, 4 additional patients. Over the past several weeks, the Greater Toronto Area Incident Management System has been directing transfer of many acute patients to support COVID patient load balancing and enhancing access to care at many hospital sites in the GTA who are facing dire capacity issues. In recent weeks, there's been an escalation in the numbers and the types of patients being transferred. Just a few days ago, Ontario saw the highest number of COVID-19 to date, with a staggering highest daily case count that came on Friday, April the 16th, with 4,812 cases. With reports today stating positivity test rate is at an all-time high since the start of the pandemic. It's a 10.5 positivity rate in Ontario. And for Central Region, it's even higher. And that is where Collingwood General Marine belongs, in Central Region, Ontario Health Region. CGMH is part of the GTA, Greater Toronto Area Management System, is accepting the transfer of alternative level of care, often called ALC, COVID positive, and COVID recovered individuals, and also internal medical patients from RVH and other sites as directed. This work is 7 days a week. And I would like to thank all the individuals who are working on this with us 7 days a week to ensure that we have safe patient transfers occurring across Ontario. Next slide, please. 1 year later, it's amazing to review how much has changed within our hospital and with our operations. In the early days of the pandemic, wave 1, a high volume of ministry directives flooded, and these changed everything. Our hospital operations were halted, surgeries were canceled, volunteers sent home, and every hour of every day went into implementing the multitude of changes that came rolling in. And we're now experiencing this again during wave 3. What made possible, though, the exponential amount of change was tremendous teamwork and collaboration that occurred both within the hospital and with our community partners. There's been an abundance of practice change documents implemented over the past year to support ministry directives, which all employees and physicians follow in the best interest of providing safe and quality patient care. The entire CGMH team has adapted swiftly to the changes, both in the early days and now, which include enhanced personal protective equipment for everyone across the hospital, daily screening questions through single-streamed staff entrance. Hospital scrubs have been provided to all frontline facing staff, from nursing to EVS to dietary, and they're worn for the day and dropped off each night prior for washing. In the early days, hospitals worked with community partners to set up COVID assessment centers across the province. What was initially erected at the front of our hospital later moved to the Collingwood Legion and Recplex in Wasaga Beach as drive-through centers, and they both are now run by members of the Georgian Bay Family Health Team. It was indeed a collaborative effort with CGMH facilities creating the ability to have the tent and the warming area for staff at the COVID centers over the winter. And now we are going to be also providing air conditioning in the small areas where staff are in those centers for the summer months. Flow through the hospital has changed greatly. In the early days, we created yellow and green areas at the front of the hospital to direct the flow of patients and throughout the hospital. The external signage remains still at the front of our hospital today, should we have to resort back to this. At the time, we designated patients who were symptomatic with COVID as yellow, or who had been in contact with symptomatic individuals or who had recently returned from travel. And as well, patients who were designated green were those who didn't display any symptoms and had no known contact with infected individuals. Our emergency department has expanded to include not only the main emergency department, as you all know it well, but also see and treat area, and is now in our ambulatory care department area. We've transitioned into ED1 and ED2 to create more waiting room space and physical space for patients to meet current infection control standards. As well, waiting room spaces have been amended throughout the hospital for physical distancing, inclusive of parts of our ambulatory care department that were running. It has now closed down in regards to our directives, current directives, and diagnostic imaging, and patient appointments were spaced out to allow for greater infection prevention and control measures for elective services and surgeries, such as enhanced cleaning between patients, airflow throughout rooms, and patient flow in and out of the hospital from arrival to exit. And in early June 2020, we were one of the first hospitals in Ontario who required that all patients and visitors needed to wear masks that were hospital masks for even greater containment. Next slide, please. Working with an outdated facility has been a challenge without access to single patient rooms. Most rooms at CGMH are shared with a shared bathroom. There is a great deal of enhanced cleaning that goes into our patient care areas to now ensure our patients and our employees and physicians remain safe. The hospitals work to find innovative ways to add additional bed space by converting a former waiting room and a former office space into additional patient care areas. While the hospital further outfitted one additional room with air scrubbers to expand our current 5-bed ICU to 6 if required. Our maintenance department has focused on enhancement to air exchanges and filtration throughout the hospital. If you take note, at the back, you can see where those enhanced air filtration areas are on the first floor. As of late last week, we've provided care to 65 in total patients with a COVID positive diagnosis. And unfortunately, 2 patients have died during the early months of the pandemic. We continue to look for and find innovative solutions to providing top-notch patient care in a very, very outdated space and infrastructure. Our employees and physicians have been exponentially adaptive and creative, but they do look forward to one day working in a state-of-the-art new hospital. Within the hospital, all employee-facing rooms, break rooms, the cafeteria, and meeting rooms have been reviewed by Occupational Health and Safety and marked for capacity limits. Our cafeteria has been spaced out to ensure tables and seating are 6 feet apart. This has meant that we have had less space for our employees to take much needed break. In an effort to create more space for employees, physicians, and learners, one room in a former area of the outpatient physiotherapy department has been turned into additional cafeteria space. Break rooms in patient care departments majority of them have been designated for 1 staff member because they are too small. Outside, additional picnic tables have been purchased to create more distanced outdoor eating area for the summer months. And we have just opened those up, although it isn't summer yet. It's been a whirlwind of change, but the teamwork and adaptability from all members of our team has been tremendous and so appreciated. Remembering though that our employees and our physicians and our learners are getting tired. But at this time, vaccines continue to roll out across the community and the region. It is hoped that as more of the population becomes vaccinated and people adhere to the public health measures and stay home, that less people will fall ill and our numbers will start to go down. Only then will we be able to return to some type of normalcy. At this time, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to provide an update on behalf of Lesley, myself, the Board of Directors, and the hospital. And also to thank the Collingwood, Town of Collingwood, and their staff and council for your tremendous support during this very, 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 very dire and critical time in our public health history.
Thank you, Norah, and thank you, Lesley, for that presentation. And it certainly has been a very difficult year, and we are hoping to get ourselves through it with the vaccines. Council, other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson, and hi, Norah and Lesley. And I'm sorry we're seeing you under reports of this type. And I was glad that you mentioned about the frontline workers at the hospital becoming tired. And I hope that everybody remembers that out here where we're all in this together, but outside of the hospital, we have to understand that the people working the front line are going through the same mental challenges, or if you will, the processes, the human processes that we're going through all of this. So I do pass along my greatest appreciation for what is done at the hospital and your ability to pivot as you have during these times. And I guess one of the other things that we hear talked about, which has been a bit detrimental, because I know how much the hospital has always relied on the family contact and the care of the patients, and to have that distance have to occur for the safety of everyone, and how you handle that. And I know from personal experience from having an iPad brought into my mother's room for her to connect with the family, and all the extra efforts you've gone through that way are really appreciated. And they're not ideal, they're not what we want, but I know that you're doing the best that you can. So thank you very, very much for that. And I really do look forward to a day when you can operate in that state-of-the-art hospital here. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor MacLeod.
Thanks. Thank you both for being here today and for the hard work that you and your staff are doing. And I just wanted to clarify one thing that was said, and because I know there are approximately 2,300 ICU beds in Ontario currently, but we are not bringing in ICU patients to Collingwood. We are bringing in ALC patients and medical patients, and not necessarily COVID patients. We're making room elsewhere for them. Is that what I'm to understand? Because I understand if the direction is changing tomorrow morning, that this answer is really only good for 15 to 20 hours.
I'm happy to answer that if that's okay, Lesley. That's a great question, Councillor MacLeod. So at this time, Collingwood is what's deemed a level 2 ICU. And for the best possible care for patients who have COVID-related critical illness and require ICU, they should be cared for in a level 3 ICU in an area where if they're intubated, and if they're not intubated, we can care for them. But if they progress and become intubated, we transfer patients out, because what we do is we need to turn patients over into a prone position. You've got a breathing tube down your trachea. There are other things that are required. In fact, it can go all the way up to quaternary care, such as at UHN, where it's an ECMO machine, and it's literally a heart lung, but really a machine that actually bypasses your lungs because they are so destroyed by COVID, because your lungs just can't continue. So we have transported patients to level 3 ICUs and to quaternary and tertiary care centers. but we have been able to care for them quite adequately prior to that state. So that is why we are now taking patients who may be COVID positive, but aren't critical, who may be COVID recovered, who are ALC, or who may be an acute care patient in a hospital setting at RVH. At this time, RVH is a level 3 hospital, and they are able to care for patients who require that level 3. Our worry is, and this is my greatest fear, and it's our entire collective greatest fear in this system, is that right now today, over 50% of patients in our hospital ICUs have COVID-related critical illness. And the ability to expand our level 3 ICU capacity is finite. A call has gone out. We've all increased as much space as we can, and a call has gone out just this weekend for hospitals who have level 3. Can you please expand it more? Can you have innovative staffing models? Because we're calling it team-based approach, where you'll have a team of individuals caring for a number of patients, not one-on-one. When our ICU capacity is full in Ontario, we will not be able to transfer anyone out for level 3. And that is what my biggest fear is. ICUs will be full. So if you have a car accident, you have a brain bleed, etc., you will not be able to be transferred out because there are no ICU beds. That is why people are being asked to please stay at home unless it's an emergency. Please take the first vaccine that's offered to you. Please don't go out vaccine shopping. If you're 40 and above, you now can get AstraZeneca. There is enough of it in supply. Please take it, because those who are younger need that Pfizer and that Moderna. So, and you are right, Marianne, it's going to change. It will change, and it will change because the situation is fluid, and I'm sure you've all seen the modeling. And so we're preparing here as best we can. We've expanded into our room right beside our ICU in the medical floor. We have a 6 ICU bed, and if required, we're looking into, if it's needed, do we have the capability and the capacity, and it's Health Human Resources to be able to provide level 2, maybe level 3 ICU care. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, although if I could have a follow-up, Mr. Mayor. So Ms. Holder, am I to understand that there's 1,100 ICU beds taken up with COVID patients right now across Ontario? Is that the number that we're working with? Because I thought 800 was like the worst it could get.
So we're at 700, and what was it today? Let me take a peek. I just need to take a peek at that just to give you the numbers. Just bear with me, please, and thank you. Here's the report for today. And I may be reporting for our central region area, and my apologies. There are so many reports, I apologize. So let me get into all of Ontario. So today in adult ICU, there are all adult ICUs in Ontario, a total of 737 patients in ICUs with COVID critical related illness. And in the pediatric ICUs, that's adult. Oh, now they've combined them. There we go. It's adult and pediatrics. So there's it's 737. So that's just below, that's below 50%, but in central region, my apologies, in our Ontario Health region, it's over 50%. So Ontario Health for our region goes from the upper GTA, it includes Humber, it includes Trillium, North York General, etc., and comes all the way north to Muskoka, Algonquin. So it's our Ontario Health region, my apologies. Thanks for that clarification. As I said, there's so much data, it can become confusing, and I'm really glad you asked that because I wouldn't want to give the wrong information.
I've been watching the 800 number, like watching that we don't like hoping and praying we never hit 800 first. Anyways, thank you very much. And again, thanks for being here and for the hard work that you're doing and your staff.
Well, thank you. And I think we're going to hit 800 pretty soon.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Any other questions or comments, Council? Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, of course, thank you to Norah and Lesley. And like all of council, we just really wish you were here under different circumstances, but so glad for that little glimmer of hope to see our hospital on that list. Norah, you brought up such an important point, so I'm going to share it with our CAO. You talked about vaccines, and I mentioned it too at the start. I hope our town can help amplify those messages about vaccine availability, where to go. I hope members of council can help our community get over any vaccine hesitation or fears by sharing that information as well. I hope as a community we can continue to just spread that message to let people know where to get the vaccine, to overcome any vaccine hesitancy and get our community on the other side of it. So thank you for mentioning the importance of that. And we're really glad that there's opportunity for more and more members of our community to get that vaccine. And thank you for everything you and your staff are doing. It's impossible for us to express our gratitude. Thank you.
Council, any other questions or comments? Norah and Lesley, thank you very much for taking time on your busy schedules for coming to present to us today. We hope to have some very good news for you by the end of this meeting with respect to a contribution to the reserve fund. And we thank you again for all that you're doing in our community and for your incredible team over there and all the work that you're doing behind the scenes and also out in getting the vaccines out and the testing done as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks for
Thank you,
having
Mayor. I would like to say the vaccination is a really big effort by all.
Yeah.
We have a small role in it, and it's really the community agencies such as the Georgian Bay FIT, the South Georgian Bay Community Health Center, Public Health, and as well local pharmacies. So they're the ones who are really doing a three-pronged effort. So thanks to them.
It's going to take the community, but thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Okay, that brings us to our second deputation, Collingwood related Simcoe County District School Board update. We have our school trustee, Tanya Snell here. And I see you there, Tanya. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Good. All right. You have 10 minutes. So take it away.
Great. If I could ask someone to share the screen, that'd be awesome. Thank you. There we go. Okay, so good evening, Your Worship, council and staff and respective viewers. Thank you for allowing me to present and bring forward this update from the Simcoe County District School Board. As mentioned, perhaps I'm Tanya Snell. I'm proud to be your elected representative for both Collingwood and Wasaga Beach at the Public School Board table. In addition to the board, I thought it would also be mentioned, I'm also a member of the Parent Involvement Committee, as well as SEAC, which is the Special Education Advisory Committee. And I also sit as the alternate for our chair, Trustee Lloyd, at the Ontario Public School Board Association. If you could switch to the next slide, please. Okay, so this slide here represents our 4 strategic pillars of priorities for the 2017-2022 years. As you can see, the primary focus is excellence in teaching and learning, well-being, community, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. These operate as our guiding compass, providing direction and accountability for all of the decisions that we make at the board table. Next slide, please. We have just under 38,000 elementary school students in 88 elementary school facilities, just slightly over 15,000 secondary students and 15 secondary schools. Separate from this as well, we have about 6,000 approximate staff, and we balance an annual budget of $617 million. Just for a reference, the geographical area of Simcoe County District School Board, we go as far south as Bradford, and then to the right of the bay, we go up to Midland and Penetang, and to the west of the bay, we go as far north as Collingwood, northwest as Collingwood. So it's quite a large geographical area that we serve. Next slide, please. With COVID-19, obviously, all of us have had to make significant adjustments in our daily lives and how we operate as organizations and businesses. If you could switch, please. So in regards to what we've done at the school board, we are guided by two different organizations, the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, as well as the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education makes the decisions on whether we are in school, out of school, online learning, masked or unmasked. And basically as a school board, we do our best and have been doing our best, in my opinion, almost to a level of best practice when you compare with other school boards in implementing these nonstop continuous changes. So we've enhanced our cleaning and disinfecting. We've obviously installed a ton of acrylic shielding. We now have mandatory masking for all age students as well as our staff. We have a self-screening tool that students and staff use. We've also changed the direction in terms of the entrances and exits from the building to try to minimize the congestion of people. And we've also staggered entry time and exit times, especially as that relates to busing. Next slide, please. As part of this health and safety, we provide all of the PPE for all of our staff. Obviously face shields, goggles, gowns, sanitizers, portable disinfectant for cleaning. Our total investment for the PPE is, just as you can see there on the slide, $2.6 million. Next, please. We've also implemented asymptomatic testing. We're a pilot project for the province in doing this. This slide is a little dated. We have had 2 positive cases that were found through the asymptomatic testing. This is being done, it's okay, sorry. This is being done just for background through secondary schools, where basically the feeder schools that feed into that secondary school are the students and faculty of those schools are invited to come in during the non-school hours to do the asymptomatic testing. And the primary focus at this point has been in the southern region. You can go ahead, please. Thank you. So COVID-19, we've required not only the investment in the sanitization and the cleaning, but also significantly in the technology piece, especially as it relates to one of those pillars, if you remember, of equity, diversity and inclusion. Go ahead, next slide, please. In our area, obviously we have some families who were not in a position to be able to afford, perhaps, or accommodate the need for the online learning, the tools that were needed. So we purchased and distributed 8,000 Chromebooks so that all of our students could have equal access to online learning. And then we also invested in 2,000 internet hotspots. As we all understand, the internet can be a little spotty through different areas of the region. I was super pleased to have reported back from Superintendent Stevens that in the first wave of online learning, after this initial investment of nearly $4.5 million was implemented, all of these pieces, nearly all, were returned. There was some minor damage, of course, but otherwise the investment was able to be recovered. And then now, as we're entering the second round of online learning, at-home learning, these products are in the process of being redistributed to families that need them. It's pretty impressive to think that $7.1 million nearly collectively in response to COVID-19 was invested through our school board, and none of that came from capital. That was all found through very creative repositioning of dollars. Next slide, please. So as with many organizations, we undergo a capital plan, and this is our capital plan for 2021-2022. Next slide, please. So this was brought forward to the Board of Trustees in February. And basically what the capital plan does is it, just a little backstory. So each year, typically around this time, the province requests a list of 10 capital priorities from each school board across Ontario. And there was concern this year that there might have been a significant delay because of all of the COVID investments and distractions, or perhaps that list of 10 might have been reduced to 5 or 6. So basically, as we are assembling that list, senior staff assembles that list to bring forward to the board. These are the projected growth numbers in regards to our region, specifically including Collingwood, Stayner, and Wasaga Beach. These are the numbers that historically have been gathered through their sort of projected tools, which historically have been very, very accurate. As we are all seeing in this region, we are experiencing tremendous growth at this time right now. And I think COVID has just exponentially moved that along even faster. Next slide, please. This is a summary of capital investments that have been done since 2018 and that are projected into 2021 for the Collingwood area and our community of schools here. So you can see there's been a fair bit of upgrades and enhancements. The new Collingwood Learning Center was a significant investment. Mountain View got that beautiful addition. I had a chance to tour it just prior to COVID. It's just a beautiful addition to their school. And then we've also got coming up in the summer, 3 significant projects going on at CCI to enhance that school as well. Next slide, please. In regards to the secondary school, basically, as I mentioned with the capital priorities, those came forward on Wednesday, March 24th. So they did come through as expected in the timeline. Thankfully as well, they did come through with the 10 requested projects. So that is fantastic news for our school board and for our communities. At this point, the way it sits is, as I mentioned, the senior team assembles that list of 10 priorities, which were identified through our capital priorities information that came forward in February. That list is being summarized to 10, and then it will be presented to the trustees in our April board meeting on the 28th. At that point, it will be voted on and then basically sent back to senior staff to assemble the business cases to support those 10 submissions. That will be submitted to the ministry by the 21st of May. And with the hope that we will get that approved, which ones get approved will be confirmed by August or September of this year. It's hopeful that Wasaga Beach, Collingwood, and Stayner as a region to deal with our secondary school challenges and accommodation challenges will be included on that list of 10 priorities this year. And at that point, if that is the case, then senior team at the school board will be reaching out to the respective CAOs and leadership within the municipalities to perhaps request a letter of support to see whether or not there's any interest in potential partnerships on a potential new secondary school. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm open to any questions, please.
That was excellent timing. Tanya came in with just 15 seconds to spare, so thank you very much for that.
Racing.
You must have been practicing. Council, are there any questions for Tanya on that excellent presentation? I've got Councillor McLeod, then Councillor Jeffrey, and then Councillor Doherty. Go ahead, Councillor McLeod.
Hi, thanks for being here. I was wondering if you could just clarify, because the discussion was regarding, and through the mayor, of course, was regarding 10 possible projects to be endorsed by the school board. And is one of them likely to be a high school, or is three of them likely to be a high school? Because you mentioned Collingwood, Wasaga Beach, and Stayner.
McLeod, through you to the table. The way that I understand that the school board is sort of looking at this area is we are a bit unique. Wasaga Beach does not have its own high school, and the students in Wasaga Beach are distributed, for lack of a better word, to Elmvale, Stayner, and CCI, and of course the Catholic school as well. But the predominant of those students are in CCI. So unfortunately, you have a bit of a domino effect when you make any significant change or addition or switch to the secondary panel in this area, Because if, for example, if we were to take the, say, 600 students out of CCI and put them in their own school in Wasaga Beach, then CCI obviously becomes grossly underutilized and inefficient. When you look at Stainer was modified to include grades 7 and 8 in order to make that school more operable. What has been sort of discovered was that in hopes that the grade 7 and 8 would connect with their school more and perhaps choose to stay at Stainer for their secondary years, what they're choosing to do is sort of vote with their feet, and they're still attending CCI because of the diversity of the programming. So it's kind of like a nut and shell game. There has to be basically a strategy that's developed to deal with the growth challenges that we face in the secondary panel in this area. So I foresee it being submitted as one piece and then potentially broken out from there. What's important to mention as well is that CCI has just recently undergone a third-party evaluation in terms of its life expectancy. I haven't had the detailed report of that yet, but I understand that it's not near as bad as Banting. Banting is the oldest school in our system and is definitely needing replacement. CCI, from what I understand, still has some life in it. So that could help or hinder the process, depending on how you look at it.
Thank you. So sorry, just to follow that up then, we don't know yet if it's one school that is one secondary school that's going to be discussed in this list or 3 or some combination thereof through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sorry, to clarify, I believe that it's going to be submitted if we are successful to make it on the list, which is my hope, is that it's going to be a regional piece. It's going to be sort of what they're calling North Simcoe West, to deal with the 3 schools. There's 3 schools, one cannot come without the other with a solution. I have had conversations, and I think there's creative options, whether it's individual high schools for each community, or maybe there's a potential hybrid model, or not saying that there's just one solution. But at least if we get on the list this year, then it signals to the province that we have a growth issue in this area that needs to be addressed immediately and urgently.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson, and through you to Tanya. Hello again.
Hello.
You. The question, and I was really excited to see that our invitation to have you attend had been accepted, was one that came up during our planning meetings in development and operations. And I'm wondering if you can speak a bit to the process of how the board identifies properties for future expansion. And I was curious because we had 2 developers come to us on the same stretch of 10th line property with proposals for school property within their development. So can you speak to how that would occur? It just seems strange to me that they would be holding in two developments on the same stretch for the same area.
I can do the best to my ability and knowledge. Obviously, I'm not involved at that deep trench sort of level. Senior team would be more so. But my understanding, for example, in Wasaga Beach, it's just recently, last term was approved for a new elementary school, a much needed elementary school. We are beyond capacity for our 2 existing elementary schools, and we're now busing students, new students that move into one of the 7 developments that are actively here in the beach are now being bused to both Connaught in Collingwood and out of area. But in that particular situation, the developer brought forward a plan or a proposal to work in collaboration with the school board. The province really likes partnerships, right? They want us to all work together and contribute financially for enhanced facilities and multi-use facilities. And in the Wasaga Beach situation, the developer came forward with some allocated lands, with some dollars to contribute to enhancing some of the surrounding property. The municipality came with some stuff, and together it was decided that that was a location also based on the geographical location of the lands in terms of accessibility. Ultimately, that's what impacted the decision. Sometimes, from what I understand from Superintendent Jeffs, which business and facilities sits in his portfolio, from what I understand, from what he's explained, is that really it's about timing. It's about, there may be an ideal location, but that developer may not be ready infrastructure wise or selling wise or building wise to be able to accommodate based on the timeline. Because once we get approved on one of these approved, say 10 projects, there's a timestamp in terms of when that school needs to be occupied. You can't sit on the land and sit on the money forever. If that helps to answer your question at all.
Through Mayor Saunderson, it does a bit, and just understanding that maybe our planning department needs to speak to kind of with a different department to get that answer. But anyway, I appreciate the answer you were able to give. Thank you.
Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hello, Tanya. Nice to see you, and thank you for being here. You sort of halfway went down to answering my question. I wanted to explore a little bit more about what you meant by potential partnerships on a new secondary school. And I wanted to know, when you look at potential partnerships, are you looking strictly for cash injections, or are you looking for facility partnerships whereby we have the opportunity to create community hubs with multiple services, not just education being offered in these facilities?
Tanya.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. To the table, from what I understand, if you look at Angus, for example, the secondary school at Angus, that's a really good example of one of the first community hubs in our Simcoe County District School Board. It has an enhanced recreation facility. It also has community partners like community policing, and I believe Simcoe Muskoka Health is there. I think there might be a wing of mental health. I think there is an abundant opportunity that is uncapped and unlimited. I think we have the unique ability in this region. I think there's some identified pieces where there are shortcomings for the region, not just for each individual community, whether that's a theater, whether that's some really great recreation space, whether there's entrepreneurial development, hospitality industry to support our tourism and some of our labor shortfalls in the region. I think there's some incredible opportunities. And to answer your question specifically in regards to municipal contribution, that really varies and depends on what the municipality is able to bring forward. In some situations, they bring dollars. Like in the Wasaga Beach situation, they are actually contributing dollars over a period of time, as they did in Elmville. They made a financial commitment over a period of time, and in return, they get a say and contribution in terms of the design. So in Wasaga Beach, the gym's going to be a little bit bigger, which was a shortcoming that the municipality had from a Parks and Recs perspective. In Elmville, it got a beautiful fitness center that the community was lacking. So, or a commercial kitchen. So, but in some municipalities, they don't have the dollars, but they do have land. So it really is open for a creative solution. That really happens between our senior team and your senior team.
You follow up, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. Your answer is music to my ears. I actually was thinking of the Angus example, but some of the other opportunities that you alluded to, for example, theater as one, are just exactly what a community hub should be, and an excellent example of making dollars go a very long way and benefiting the community. So thank you for that. Don't lose those thoughts.
Council, any other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Hamlin. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. It's very much down the path of the previous questions with regards to partnership. We have 4 different school boards within our community, if you include private, and there are examples in other communities or school boards where the elementary, or sorry, not the elementary, but the provincial system and the Catholic system have collaboratively come together on new builds. And I'm just wondering if that has been given any thought or consideration. The merits certainly here in Collingwood would support expanded services, say to Our Lady of the Bay, where there's no music program. There are limited athletic programs, cooking in terms of culinary, simply because they don't have the population and probably will never have the population. And yet literally down the street, we've got a school that from a physical plant perspective is beyond its age, but from a academic standard offers all of those programs I just mentioned. And some type of collaboration where you've got two school systems coming together on a new build has proven successful elsewhere. And I'm just wondering if that's been ever considered. Thank you. And thanks for your overall presentation tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hall. I would, one thing that I can say as an example of where those two school boards work together is the Transportation Consortium. So the way that historically, long time ago, each school board managed their own transportation. And transportation is one of the gnarliest beasts of a school board when you're thinking about safely transporting over 35,000 students safely every day, day in and day out, no matter the weather. So the consortium brings both boards together, and collectively they operate an annual budget of $30 million. And they move 35,000 students with 720 vehicles to 150 facilities. So has it happened before in terms of the two boards working together? That's a clear example of where they can team up and be extremely effective and cost effective. I think, though, to not lose sight that we have enough students between Stayner, Wasaga Beach, and Collingwood for our own facility and then some. If we wanted to do something from the public's perspective, the public school board perspective for this region. But I don't disagree that there is definite examples of where the two boards have come together and worked together. Whether there's an existing facility in Ontario that has the two boards together, that I'm not aware of. But at this point, I think to Councillor Doherty's point, we have to be all public entities with tax dollars have to be as creative and as resourceful and as ingenious as possible in coming up with solutions that are cost effective and that deliver the results.
Thank you, Tanya. Any follow-up, Deputy Mayor? Okay. Councillor Hamlin?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, Tanya. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
I just have one question. I know at CCI there are some students who live in the town of Blue Mountains, which is the town on our western border. They don't have a high school there. Are they in our school system and in our school? Well, let me put it this way. Do you take those students into account in your planning for future?
Technically, if they're in the town of Blue Mountains, they would be in the Blue Mountains, I think it's the Blue Water District. So technically they should be in their own school district. So whether they own a property in Collingwood that they're able to slide into our area through, I'm not quite sure. My understanding was that CCI was, as with most of our schools in the school in our county, are closed to out of bounds because we are so full. And so I was under the impression that I thought CCI was. Sometimes we will take out of bounds for the French immersion program or for some of the specialty programs that we do. But no, I'm not aware of it being open to out of bounds.
Okay, thank you.
Council, any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Tanya, thank you very much for taking time today. Very informative, and you're right on point. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. And I would just like to mention, if you get a chance, please do tune into our April 28th board meeting. That's when that list will be come forward to the board, and hopefully we will get great news and that we will be on that list. And then I'm open to conversations. Let's have some conversations and let's look at some solutions for this area. And I think what's most important is to hear from the students and the future students, to hear what they would like to see in terms of whether they want one in their own community or would they like to team up and create something magnificent. I'm quite excited about the options. So I appreciate the opportunity and coming and sharing the information.
Thank you for that. If you could send us the information for the April 28 board meeting, I'll make sure it gets sent around to council.
For sure.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Enjoy
Thank
the
you.
rest of the day.
You too.
And this brings us to item 6.3, a Millennium Park food truck proposal. And we have Steve and Vanessa Walker on behalf of the 1858 Caesar Bar. There you are. Welcome, both of you. Can you hear us?
For sure.
Okay, go ahead. You have 10 minutes.
You too.
And this brings us to item 6.3. Wow, we're getting reverb.
Yeah, we're back.
Vanessa and Steve, you can hear us?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay, all right. Go ahead. You have 10 minutes.
Councilors and anybody else listening and watching. We're here today to discuss the matter of putting a food truck in Millennium Park, Heritage Drive. We're asking for the very first licensed food truck there. It'd be an 1858 Caesar Bar outdoor venue, sectioned off and licensed off. We've met Dean. Was the layout of our trailer, our food trailer, based on, I think everybody needs a Caesar right now. So based on everything going on right now, with the outdoors being where everything's pivoting to, we feel it's in the, obviously the food and beverage industry is taking a hard hit, as many other people and many other industries to which we advocate for, such as hair salons and gyms and everybody else. It's not just about us. However, Vanessa and I felt if we can create a great place for people, the locals, to come and be outdoors, which from the famous words of Dr. Isaac Bogosh, it's super, super safe outdoors. So, versus the indoor effect, as we know, we're limited on patio space here. And obviously, we're truly appreciative of the street patios. Having said that, we're willing to put forward in excess of a $100,000 investment in our trailer, the one that we're buying, and should council approve this and allow us to do it, we'll do it right. We've already spoken to the AGCO. The AGCO is okay with everything. Now, what is required for us is we actually need to have a physical address in order, should you approve this, to have an address to go alongside with that. So we're willing to take forward the investment of paying for a full liquor license, because a special occasions permit and all the other style of catering permits, they will not apply for a situation like that, because you can't reapply and you're only limited to the amount of times you can apply. So that's what we're proposing, and in the essence of time, if everybody just says yes, it's really easy. But that's what we'd like to put out there, is an 1858 Caesar Bar trailer. We'd be responsible, obviously, for the insurance, liabilities, and so on and so forth, to which we've also looked into. So we're making headway. But again, because of the essence of time, when you apply for a full liquor license with the AGCO, it just doesn't happen overnight. I have a tentative application in, not submitted. It's called a tentative application. Again, they said they'd expedite it because it typically sometimes could take 2 to 3 months. So, but in order to do that, like Taj, the food truck that's there, Taj, when you Google Earth him, you'll see he uses 1 Heritage Drive. SoCal uses 45 Heritage Drive. For us, we would need a physical address in order to attach the liquor license to an address. Without that, and when we spoke to Becky, hence why we're here talking to you guys, is that doable?
Thank you for that. Council, other questions or comments for Vanessa and Steve? Councillor McLeod and then Councillor Doherty.
Hi, thanks for coming to see us. And through the mayor, I'd like to ask you if you could maybe just describe what it is where you're thinking of insofar as the truck feeds French fries and the sorts of stuff that you guys have at the Caesar bar and also drinks. But would there be like a fenced off area? Like how does, because I don't think we can just walk around. I know that there's been a lot of loosening of liquor laws since COVID hit, but I don't think we're walking around at Millennium Park just yet. Or did I miss something? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor McLeod. That's a great question. Having said that, no, it would be, and obviously willing to work with dimensions, but when we went to measure today an 85 by 85 area, believe it or not, the AGCO said you can license the whole park, but we don't envision it that way. We just envision a section off with event fencing, the lower event fencing, so people stay corralled within that area. We've already, in anticipation, hopefully it goes well with our friends, we've got a ton of picnic tables. We'll do it right, that we can promise you. We'll aesthetically make it eye-pleasing. Umbrellas, and yes, you would be, Councillor McLeod, you would be into a section which we're proposing 85 by 85.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much for your presentation. I think we all have, or many of us have spent time in Europe. We've spent time in Quebec, and we know how relaxed it can be to be able to enjoy an alcoholic beverage, not in a restricted, highly regulated space. And with COVID on us right now, and as you mentioned, the safety that we can enjoy by being outdoors. In principle, I'm very supportive of your request, and I'm just wondering if we can pass Steve and Vanessa on to staff and figure out a way that we could help to accommodate this business concept and this additional animation for our parks and for our community.
Thank you for that, Councillor Doherty. I think the answer to that is we'd need a motion to refer this to staff for a report on a report back to council on how we could do this and what it would look like.
I'd be happy to make that motion, Your Worship.
All right, so I've got a mover. Do I have a seconder, please? I've got Councillor McLeod. So we have a motion, but before I call the vote, I will continue to go around the table just for other questions or comments, but we do have a motion. So I've got Councillor Hamlin and then Councillor Comey.
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor, to Vanessa or Steve. For how long are you asking for this permission to be in place?
Thank you, Councillor Hamlin. Right now, we're looking for the summer. I mean, we understand it would be similar to our first winter patio experience when we were in front of some of you at the time. Obviously, for the duration of the summer, working with the town as well, and saying, well, here's your cutoff. I guess no different than patios right now. And then by the end of summer, we just shut it down and away we go from there. Basically, it's new to us too. We just feel I think it's great for the community. It's great for the people, and it gets people outside and have fun. So for the summer.
Okay, yeah, because I'm sort of wondering what the future will bring in terms of other interested parties who might want to do something similar, right? It's not that big of a space, but and also, have you thought at all about whether people would be driving there and whether there's sufficient parking?
That's a great question as well. We have been there. I mean, we've been here now, Vanessa and I, for 8 years. We'll go down there. There is sometimes it's congested, as many parks are. Congestion's been a bit heavier this past summer as well again. But I feel there's ample parking there. It's also, when you look at here, it's also a gateway for walking, bicycles, or what more and more people are doing now. Like you all mentioned earlier today, everybody's on their bicycles. And our venue brings a different type of atmosphere as well. We're not known as a party hub. It's not a steakhouse or a big roadhouse. But we would do, again, having said that, we would do all our due diligence to make sure things are done properly under the AGCO laws and everything that we do currently in our current location.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Comey.
Thanks you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Steve and Vanessa, always great to see you. And I think what's exciting is you always challenge us. And I'm glad you've come back with another challenge. And you've used the phrase over and over, do it right. And you challenged us with winter patios, and you did it right, in my opinion. And you challenged us with more outdoor patio space on the street, and in my opinion, you did it right. So I'm glad you're here with this ask, with a proven track record of coming before us with an ask, being successful, and then doing it right. So I'm absolutely going to be in favor of this motion because it also makes me think about our master development plan. And if memory serves correct, there was some vision that included alcohol being down there by a brew pub or some such thing. I'm all about activation of the waterfront. I hope this gets in front of staff, and I hope when it does, you all do. My favorite topic is washrooms. You can't have a conversation with me without it. So I hope we think about porta potties and hand washing and all those good things. And I hope my colleagues feel equally excited about this with this motion in front of us. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for your creativity and passion for the town and looking for ways to continually engage the community and visitors to our town. Thank you so much.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. I actually have a question through you to staff, if I may.
Yeah.
I guess the question is based on the assumption that this is going to be forwarded to or referred to staff to come back with a report. And I, in no way, shape, or form do I want to prejudice the report or anybody's initiative. But I just wanted to ask and get an understanding. My understanding is that this issue, not specific to the Walkers or their fine establishment, but I'm talking about the establishment at Sunset Point, has come forward in the past, and either a previous council or councils have turned down applications. So whatever the case, if we could have a history provided as well, and a history as to the understanding of why past decisions were made, to be included as part of a report. Thank you. And actually, I do have maybe one question, if I may, through you, sir, to the Walkers. And that would be just purely out of interest, seeing that you're growing and expanding on the western shores of Lake Huron and beautiful Sauble Beach. Is this a type of concept that you've approached their municipality with in terms of having a patio that is not part of your actual physical premise?
That's a great question, Deputy Mayor Hall. So obviously we're new to Sauble Beach, and our current location is right on the water, pretty much adjacent to the that area is already, they're allowing food trucks in there. And, I've been a business person. My wife and I, Vanessa, have always been like, more is good. So there's food trucks now coming to that area, and I think that's great. I think there's a plethora of business for everybody. And to touch on the point, like prior decisions, it's, you look at all the years of why, Collingwood has a beautiful shoreline. It's gorgeous here. However, there's never been a restaurant or pub or anything to that degree other than seafood place, Lakeside, to where, never mind tourists and all that, but even locals can go and have a cocktail and, look at the beautiful water, the mountain view. So, for me, I think it's time for change. And like Councillor Comey said that, we'll do it right. We'll make sure it looks, if it gets passed, we'll do all those things properly. So to go back to the main question, for us, like it would be for you, which we've done in the past, it's somewhat of a test pilot for us too. The investment of this trailer has restrooms built into it as well, self-contained. It's actually, if you've ever seen Tim Hortons go through renovation, it's a Tim Hortons trailer that they use when they do the renovations at Tim Hortons. So they're typically $500,000. So we are prepared to invest. We're able to get one for $100,000. And again, because we want to do it right, we just don't want it to look like, I will not, Vanessa and I, and our brand, we're not going to put an eyesore there. We want the same amount of tourism that we pull in at 1858 Caesar Bar. In the spirit of the town, the community, when the town was incorporated, we want to do the same thing there. And no, we did not approach Solid Beach.
All right, council, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to refer this to staff for a report on the feasibility. And I will call the vote then. All in favor? And I think that is carried unanimously. Thank you. So thank you very much, Vanessa and Steve. And we will we'll be in touch, as they say. Thank you and take care.
Have a great evening.
This brings us to item 7 on the agenda. And so the motion reads as follows: that the general consent agenda, having been given due consideration by the standing committee, by council, be received. And further, that the information and opinions provided in the general consent agenda items are that of the authors and are not verified or approved as being correct. We have 8 items tonight. 7.1 proclamation, Rotary Earth Day, April 22nd, 2021. 7.2 proclamation, Parental Alienation Awareness Day and Bubbles of Love Day, April 25, 2021. 7.3 Township of Pickle Lake changes to the Municipal Act and Municipal Elections Act re-candidates with criminal records. 7.4 General Hillier COVID-19 Vaccine Distribution Task Force update dated March 26, 2021. 7.5 Minister of Finance Ontario Cannabis Legalization Implementation Fund OCLIF update. 7.6 Town of Amherstburg, support for universal paid sick days in Ontario. 7.7 Tim Fryer, letter review of information for final council decision on staff report T 2021-3 titled Sale Asset Proceeds. And item 7.8 Town of the Blue Mountains Highway 26 Speed Limit Assessment Update. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that motion, please? I've got Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Hamlin. So first we'll call for the motion to receive the consent agenda, and then I will ask for items to be pulled. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Councillor, are there any items you'd like pulled from the consent agenda today? Councillor Comey, what number?
Mr. Mayor, 7.1 and 7.5, please.
All right. Are there any other items, council? Seeing none, go ahead, Councillor Comey with 7.1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's first of all, it's a lovely proclamation. It's wonderful that Rotary is behind Earth Day this year. But through you, I think to our clerk, is sort of a housekeeping question. It made me curious. Does our town independently recognize some of these significant days like Earth Day? Like if the good people at Rotary hadn't taken the time to send in a proclamation, does the town have a standing acknowledgement at the ready every year for some of these important days?
I'll look to Claire Collins. I know we certainly have done town cleanup on Earth Day as a municipal project, but I don't know if we unilaterally do declarations. Claire Collins?
Correct, Your Worship, to Councillor Comey and all of council. We don't have a standing proclamation that we do for any particular item. If something does come forward that a member brings forward, we would follow the normal process. We do, as council's aware, have various media attention to various, special months or special days, but not specific to proclamations.
Councillor Comey, any follow-up?
Yeah, and sorry, just to clarify for me, but the town would, whether or not somebody had submitted a piece of paper, we do have a little calendar that would say, hey, it's Earth Day. We want to make sure as a community we acknowledge and celebrate Earth Day, just like we did Black History Month. So I just wanted to confirm that, because that wording struck me as just unusual. It's Rotary Earth Day because it is actually just Earth Day, but it's wonderful they're doing it. So thank you for that clarification. And then, Mr. Mayor, if I may ask.
Yeah, go ahead. 7.5. Yeah.
Just another administrative question, please, Mr. Mayor, through you to perhaps Treasurer Quinlan. So there's some great news here in this letter. Collingwood was among the first municipalities with this council to approve cannabis sales, and now the good fortune is money gets distributed. I was just curious, do we let our residents know that? Do we have any messaging to be like, hey, Collingwood, I know you're seeing a lot of these stores popping up, but the good news is here's how much money we're going to see because of it.
Treasurer Quinlan. We're not hearing you, Monica. It looks like you're on mute, but we're not hearing you. No, we're not getting it. Unfortunately, we're not getting it. So
that's no worries, Mr.
Maybe we'll
Mayor.
take that question. We'll take that question under advisement, and Treasurer Quinlan will maybe log in under other business or get an answer out to council. Any other items, council? That takes us then to item 8, which is reports and minutes of other committees and boards. And the resolution is that the minutes of the following boards be hereby received and recommendations contained therein be approved. 8.1 Collingwood Public Library Board minutes, March 25, 2021. Item 8.2 Joint Police Services Board, Collingwood and the Town of the Blue Mountains minutes of March 15, 2021. That was a joint meeting. Can I get a mover and a seconder to receive this? Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Berman. So I'll first vote to receive the minutes, and then if anyone has a question, they can ask the guided questions then. So first to receive the minutes. All in favor? That is carried. Council, are there any questions arising from the minutes? Seeing none, that brings us to item 9, the Standing Committee Report. 9.1 is the Strategic Initiatives meeting of March 29, 2021. And 9.1.1, these are the items that were approved unanimously at the SIC meeting. So I will read in the motion. And the motion reads that Council received the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee report from its meeting held March 29, 2021, and hereby approve the recommendations contained within the report as presented. T 2021-2, 2020 Statement of Remuneration paid to Council and appointed board members. The recommendation is to receive for information. T 2021-03 asset sale proceeds. And these were the recommendations that were approved unanimously. Recommendation to authorize staff to allocate asset sale proceeds as follows. 1, transfer $4 million to the Land Acquisition Reserve Fund and begin the selection of a realtor to identify properties that meet the needs of the community-based strategic plan. 2, $3 million to the extension of municipal services and the enhancement of Heritage Drive, portion of phase 1 of the Waterfront Master Plan. 3, transfer $1,024,540 to repay the outstanding amount remaining in the internal loans. 4, transfer $1 million to address the shortfall of the Working Capital Reserve Fund. 5, transfer $885,000 to address the shortfall of the Waterfront Master Plan Reserve Fund and enable a significant waterfront project to proceed. And 6, transfer $500,000 to address the shortfall of the Life Cycle Replacement Fund. And then there is another operational CAO 2021-3 operational planning process and 2021 operational plan. And the recommendation is to receive for information the CAO performance plan. So these items were all passed unanimously. I'll ask for a motion to get it on the floor. That's Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Madigan. And before I call the vote, are there any items that council would like to pull for a change in the recommendation? Seeing none, then I will call the report or the vote then, and this is to receive the recommendations and endorse the motions. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And this takes us to items 9.1.2, which is T 2021-3 asset sale proceeds. These are the recommendations that were not approved unanimously. And so what I propose to do, council, is to sever these. So we'll go through them individually, starting with the first recommendation, and that is council authorize staff to allocate the sale asset proceeds as follows. Transfer 2 million to a reserve fund established for the proposed hospital redevelopment. And I get a mover and a seconder, Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Comey. Any questions or comments, council, before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? That is passed unanimously. Thank you. Item 2, the council authorizes staff to allocate the asset sale proceeds as follows. The council authorizes staff to allocate the remainder of the sale proceeds as follows. And the first one we'll deal with is to transfer $1 million to the Collingwood Greening Legacy Fund. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Berman and Councillor Jeffrey. Are there any questions or comments before I call the vote on this, council? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Worship. I'm responding to this particular motion, but I'm actually proposing a reallocation of 2 of the items that are included among these recommendations. And the reason being that I believe that overall the allocations that we have recommended are not consistent with what our residents asked of us. Their number one priority priority for the expenditure of the sale proceeds was for pay down of debt. And we have done a very good job here by paying down internal debt and by topping up reserves and reserve funds that were not on target. But the number 2 priority was to invest in the terminals. And by not allocating any funding whatsoever to the terminals, we are not enhancing our debt position really, in that we're ignoring an $8 million unfunded liability on our books right now in the terminals. Another reason why I would recommend that we be supporting the terminals is because we're not acting in accordance with our own heritage conservation guidelines. The terminals are recognized as the most important industrial site in this community, and really the town's most significant icon. But by not making any investment in these facilities, we are in effect allowing them to be demolished by neglect. We have certainly set aside $3 million for extension of services down Heritage Drive, and this ultimately will service the terminal buildings and Millennium Park, and this is a good investment, but it does nothing to protect the terminals from further deterioration and to maximize their value through redevelopment and adaptive reuse. So for any number of reasons not entirely within our control, we have not yet issued our terminals redevelopment RFP. So it's very likely that we will not be entertaining proposals this year. In the meantime, the terminals continue to deteriorate and they become less attractive, in my view, to a potential investor. Now, importantly, the 2018 Tacoma report indicated that the highest priority action for the terminal's preservation was to address 1, life safety concerns, and 2, environmental abatement. These were top priorities. They were recommended for immediate action. We have allocated money in this year's budget and also in last year's for life safety investments. But we have done nothing to protect the terminals from further deterioration from the impacts of hazardous bio-waste from bird infiltration and securement of the marine tower windows from further infiltration by birds and by weather. None of this has been undertaken, none of it has been budgeted. The estimated cost in the Tacoma report was 1.5 to 2 million. So based on this, I'm recommending to council that we pursue the environmental abatement of these terminals at minimum, identified in the Tacoma report as an immediate priority, and allocate 1.5 million to the process. To source these funds, I would recommend, or I would propose and recommend, that $1 million would come from the Collingwood Greening Legacy Fund, and 0.5 million would come from the Collingwood Arts and Culture Legacy Fund. And I want to be very clear that in recommending the diversion of $1 million allocated to unspecified green initiatives, it's not because I oppose the town's investment in facilities and services that are sustainable and environmentally friendly, but because greening is not a priority that we should only undertake when we have extra money in the kitty. The green lens should inform every single one of our regular operational and capital activities and investments. Greening can and should be accomplished via ongoing budgeting and purchasing priorities. And by proposing to remove $500,000 from the 1.5 million that was recommended for the Arts and Culture Legacy Fund, I still believe that it leaves a substantial fund but permits a portion of these to be allocated to an immediate and urgent action. And so those are my comments. So I will not be supporting the first recommendation here to allocate funding to the Green Fund, the Green Legacy Fund. And I will also be asking for an amendment to the recommendation for the public arts, or sorry, the arts.
Culture.
Arts and culture, sorry, arts and culture allocation. Thank you. Sorry for taking so long, but there you have it.
Thank you for that, Councillor Doherty. Before I look for a seconder, I will look to CAO Skinner for an update on the status of the work on the terminals, what has been budgeted, what is being done under the current funding envelope, and next steps, I guess, in terms of the RFP process. So I'll pass it over to CAO Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that Treasurer Quinlan, should she be able to speak and talk a bit about what's been allocated in the current year, we'll give her another try. And I think there was an update relatively recently about the RFP, and otherwise acting executive director Culver or I can provide an update on that piece as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer Quinlan, hopefully we can hear you now. We're not getting it coming through.
Oh, if you don't mind, Your Worship,
Yes.
Monica, right beside the mute button is a little arrow, and you can change your audio settings. So if you're not using your headset, you might still have your thing plugged in from a previous headset, or if it's not plugged in, if you want to hit your system speakers.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
There you go.
Ah, thanks. Sorry about that.
Nope, no worries. Go ahead.
So thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so with regards to the funding that for the grain terminals, we did earlier on set aside $300,000 for from the asset sale proceeds for the RFP and redevelopment. I don't necessarily have an update on that RFP, but as CEO Skinner had mentioned, we did her executive director Culver will help us with that. There was also an additional amount in the budget of $120,000 to go along with the engineer's report on the grain terminals. And there's another amount, I believe it's about $40,000 that was set aside as a heritage review on the terminals themselves.
Thank you. Executive Director Culver, do you have anything to add on the RFP status?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So we're right now working towards getting an invitational RFP put together for the heritage assessment, and granted it's taken longer than we thought, and our apologies for whatever that's worth. It's a built heritage assessment, so a little bit of a different concept than a standard sort of residential heritage assessment, and developing the RFQ for this, or sorry, the RFP for this was a little bit challenging, but we're hoping to have it out soon. That heritage assessment will help us to inform the RFP for redevelopment, utilizing the services of a specific consultant, kind of with some expertise in public-private partnerships, to help both develop the RFP as well as help with establishing the evaluation process. So we are still, optimistically tracking for an ASAP delivery of all of this, but yeah, obviously things are going a little slower than we had hoped, but we're still moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that. So I will look then for a seconder for Councillor Doherty's amendment. Councillor Comey, are there any comments or questions then on the amendment? Councillor Comey, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Doherty, you're on fire tonight. Those were excellent words, and they're so important because you really struck me with something that I think is hugely true. First of all, our residents, it's volunteer week, and a huge amount of our residents have dedicated a huge amount of time to trying to preserve this important historic building. And further to that, to your point, we continually ask our community to engage. They answer, and this can be very frustrating when it seems like they were completely ignored. I too have spent a great deal of time, like the rest of this council, reviewing our white papers and our engineering report. And something a little different I did based on my professional experiences, review our lease agreements with our various carriers up top. We have a very important responsibility as a landlord to upkeep the facility for which we provide communication services. And I bet anybody using Rogers today really gave some thought to the role of wireless telecommunication in their life. And you just kept touching on the life safety services part. I've always been frustrated and accused of being in the weeds, but always confused that we don't properly engage in our role as a landlord with our tenants that happen to be a bunch of communication towers up top. But you touched me deeply when you said, when it comes to greening, it should be a pun, it's organic. Just saying we have a big bucket of money and it makes us green is not what being green is all about. There's simple everyday solutions. We have a master cycling plan. Everybody spoke about cycling night. We need more bike racks. We need to be changing out to LED lights. We need to get off of diesel. These are obvious examples. We had funding we put forward, I think, for a green grant consultant. We know through Councillor Jeffrey's work with FCM, she finds us great opportunities for grants through them. We can't just wrap ourselves in a big bucket of money and say, well, we fixed our green problems. I'm with you. I would not walk around proud saying that fixed anything. And we have a passionate group of people in our community who've dedicated a lot of time to this, and I agree with them. I think it's a hugely iconic, important building. we just had a deputation on people here tonight that are looking to help activate the waterfront around that. So I proudly support your motion, and I thank you for your words this evening. I thought they were just perfect and totally on point. Thank you.
Thank you. I got Councillor Jeffrey and then Councillor Berman. Go ahead, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. With all respect to my colleagues, I think they're misconstruing the point of a greening legacy, not just saying the money is there, but it can be part of any project. It can be part of the terminals project going forward, redevelopment. It can be part of any one of our capital projects where you have the ability to leverage your money into a lot more money from provincial and federal coffers, particularly when we know the federal government is speaking about the focus of their go-forward recovery position as green recovery. So this isn't some silly wordsmithing, as has been intimated by my colleagues. This is a serious ability to give us an opportunity to leverage funds for any capital project we have in terms of climate change mitigation, even right down to the concrete we're using within our projects. So I disagree that simply converting it from greening to terminals, and to suggest that we're not taking our residents seriously. I've added up 3.5 million that we've spent through our budget this year and the proposed 3 million for the Heritage Drive. We've listened, and we're starting to do some very important work to create an increased potential for the economic drivers down in our harbor and for the terminals building. So I'll be voting against the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I have a couple of what I think are process questions. The first one, if you could direct it to the appropriate person. I know last week at DevOp, Marg Moy did a deputation on behalf of the Collingwood Terminals and Harbour Action Committee. And then I can't imagine I'm the only one that got a few emails this week. And one of them is from the Executive Secretary of the Collingwood Terminals and Harbour Action Group. I'm wondering, not whether it's necessary or not, but through you to whomever, has this group registered as lobbyists yet? I looked on the website today, and the most recent version would be no, but.
We'll look to Clerk Almas. Sarah, are you able to assist on that?
Your Worship, I have not looked at the lobbyist registry lately, but I can confirm too, if they present in a public forum, that would not fall within the lobbyist registry program. But if they're registering or having conversations outside of that forum, that they should likely be registering. So I can review, and we can contact them as necessary.
Okay, thank you.
That's great.
Councillor Berman?
Yeah, I said that the most recent update on the lobbyist registry was the 6th of this month, and nothing since then. So I didn't know if there was a delay. And yeah, it was the email that I was curious about, the one in particular, because it had two things in it, which leads to my second question. It talks about, and I think the deputation referenced it too, that this group is aware of two very interested parties in the terminals. And I was wondering, maybe through you to the CAO, if you can, have you been in touch with either of these parties? Would it help? How would that affect the potential P3? It just, I'm looking for your guidance.
CAO Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Berman. I'm only aware of one group that has been made known to me that has been in conversation with the Terminals Harbour Action Group. And that group we were in conversation with. There was a period during the white paper when we actively reached out to anyone who was interested in the terminals to please let us know about the types of interests they had, and we were able to document that in the report back. So I can say for sure at that appropriate time in the process, we were talking actively with at least one group. And I think the next opportunity will be involved with the calling of inputs for an RFP as I see it today. But I think our whoever is confirmed as the executive director, one of the very first priorities will be to put together our P3 consultant and the RFP to proceed forward on the terminals. So we'll hear a bit more then, I hope, from many folks who are very interested in that active site. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Skinner. Sarah, you have your hand up?
Sorry, my apologies, Your Worship. So they have registered. The registration actually is good for a year. So I wonder if it's just out of mind for them that they haven't re-registered, especially if they have other potential interested individuals. So we'll have our lobbyist registrar contact them.
Good. Thank you for that, Sarah. Council, any other questions or comments on the amendment? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I guess, lend my voice and my support to the words of Councillor Jeffrey, but I want to recognize the words and the voice of Councillor Dorian Comey as it relates to the passion and I think what they feel, and I don't disagree from a, I guess, from a macro perspective. This is such a charged issue because the building, and it's funny that the word was used in a publication this morning that was passed out to a few of us, and that is that it's languished. It's languished for such a lengthy period of time. But I really would just like to remind Council and myself that I truly believe that we are doing the right thing. We are following the right process. And although it's taking an extended period of time, we'll get to the right place where we can make the right decision that's best for the community. The Council of 10 to 14, which I was a part of, some may recall, we went down this path where we literally, and almost quite literally, just put a for sale sign out at the base of the terminal. And I mean, no disrespect to the individuals that were involved with that, but it was just, there was no real process. There was no thought to how it is that we are going to go out to the world with this tangible product and see what was really there to create a special opportunity for the community. It was just a simple, rush to market and see what will happen. And it reminds some people of the famous Simpsons episode of the monorail. The reality is that at that point, we didn't even know what we know today, and that is that we actually do have a relatively sound investment. This council and the previous have gone through the exercise of determining at the taxpayer's expense that yes, the physical structure underneath the building that's not physical to the eye is in fact actually sound and will be sound for a period of time to allow us to go through this process to get to the right place. The reality is that we're making a significant investment, and I agree with the words of Councillor Jeffrey as it relates to Heritage Drive. The fact is Heritage Drive, or the original line that went out there via the train trail or the train tracks, I mean, it wouldn't be there if it wasn't for one of the three terminals. It just happens to be it's the current one standing, built in 29. And the investment that we're making today by passing legacy funds allocated to Heritage Drive specifically, not only meet some unfounded needs, but they shore up a true legacy. And the legacy is that arm of the shoreline that we can take advantage of and make use of to better the community long term. And at the end of that long arm happens to be the terminals and a result of past activities, Millennium Park out the back. But the investment we're making today is an investment in the terminals. And so when someone says, well, we're not putting out legacy funds aside specifically to the terminals, I respectfully disagree. And although I'll never be considered a local, I'm very proud of the fact that my boy's great-grandson is somebody who actually built and was part of the team that built the terminals in 1928-29. I walked around my home today and I have 10 different pieces of art depicting the terminals, which says one of two things. One, I have to broaden my scope of appreciation of art, or two, I have an appreciation of the terminals. But the reality is that that investing in Heritage Drive, we are sending the strongest signal possible to the investment community that we are serious about investing in the terminals long term. And when we go out to the market with an RFQ, RFP, we will, I am confident, get back not the monorail version of The Simpsons, but we will get qualified people coming back saying, yes, we want to be a partner in what you're looking to do at the harbor on behalf of the residents of the town of Collingwood. And we see a partner in the town of Collingwood who is willing to spend the monies that you've allocated today in the infrastructure of Heritage Drive. Heritage Drive is a link to the terminal, and the investment and the monies that we're spending today is in fact an investment in the terminal building and the long-term future. That's the way I see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Council, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will echo the Deputy Mayor's comments. This vote is not about the future of the terminals. We around this table have shown a strong commitment to the future of that building, and I agree with the Deputy Mayor that improving Heritage Drive and getting services out to the building and to the spit is one of the strongest indicators we can show to the private sector that we are a willing partner, and we are looking for all opportunities to repurpose that historic building. At the same time, we also have other priorities in the community, and I'd like to thank staff for the exceptional work they did in putting together a staff report that we made these decisions on at the SIC. And so with that being said, I will call the vote then on the amendment. And the amendment was to take the 1 million from the Green Legacy Fund and apply that to the Collingwood terminals. All in favor? Opposed? And that is defeated. So we'll go back to the original motion, and that is the council authorizes the transfer of $1 million to the Collingwood Greening Legacy Fund. All in favor? And just before I call opposed, I'm going to check with the clerk. Sarah, did I get a mover and a seconder for that original? No, I didn't. I'm sorry. So I need to get a mover and seconder then for the transfer of $1 million. I've got Councillor Jeffrey and Councillor Madigan. Thank you. So with that being put on the floor, then I will call the vote again. All in favor? Opposed? Duly noted. Thank you. That passes. The next item is that council authorized the transfer of $1.5 million to the Collingwood Arts and Culture Legacy Fund. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Berman and Councillor Jeffrey. Comments or questions, council? Seeing none, then I will call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Duly noted, and that is carried. And the final item is the council authorizes staff to allocate $3 million to the Collingwood Multi-Use Facility Fund. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Berman and Councillor Hamlin. Questions, comments, council? Councillor McLeod.
I'll move the amendment. I moved in the Strategic Initiatives Committee that this be split $1 million towards the terminals and $2 million towards the multi-use recreational facility. I'll need a seconder, however.
Yes, you will. Do we have a seconder for that? I've got Councillor Doherty. Are there any questions or comments on the amendment, council? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And that is defeated. So we have the original motion then, the 3 million to the Collingwood Multi-Use Facility Fund. And I think I had Councillor Berman and Councillor Jeffrey, or Councillor Hamlin, sorry, moving and seconding that. Are there any questions or comments, Council, before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? And opposed? Duly noted. All right, Council. So that concludes that section. So this brings us to item 9.2, Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee Report of March 29, 2001. Item 9.2.1, that Council received the Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee Report from its meeting held March 29, 2021, and hereby approve the recommendations contained within the report as presented. C 2021-6 Electronic Signature Policy. Recommendation to approve an electronic signature policy. Item 2, FS 2021-1 Fire Department Specific Cost Recovery Response Fees. The recommendation is to enact a cost recovery fee bylaw. Item 3, PRC 2021-1 Public Art Update. The recommendation is to receive for information. And item 4 is PRC 2021-2 Rainbow Crosswalk. Recommendation to approve the installation of a rainbow crosswalk at the intersection of St. Marie and Simcoe Streets. And these items were all passed unanimously at the Standing Committee. So I will look for Chair McLeod to move that and Vice Chair Madigan to second that. So unless there is an item that somebody wants to pull for a change of direction, I'm going to call the vote then. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. So bylaws, we have one bylaw right now, section 9.2.2, and it is moved that bylaw number 2021-18 being a bylaw to authorize cost recovery round bracket fees and bracket with respect to fire department specific response be enacted and passed this 19th day of April 2021. And that'll be moved by Chair McLeod and seconded by Vice Chair Madigan. Any questions or comments, Council? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Section 10, motions. We have one motion and it is moved by Councillor Berman. And it was notice was provided at March 22nd council meeting. Whereas the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, round bracket FCM, end bracket, represents the interests of member municipalities on policy and program matters that fall within federal jurisdiction. And whereas FCM's board of directors is comprised of elected municipal officials from all regions and sizes of community to form a broad base of support and provide FCM with the united voice required to carry the municipal message to the federal government. And whereas FCM's virtual annual conference and trade show will be held June 1st to 4th, 2021, during which time the annual general meeting will be held and followed by the election of FCM's board of directors. Therefore, be it resolved that Council of the Town of Collingwood endorse Councillor Jeffrey to stand for election on FCM's board of directors for the period starting June 2021 and ending June 30, 2022. And further, be it resolved that Council assumes all costs associated with Councillor Jeffrey attending FCM's board of directors meetings as budgeted. And can I get a seconder for that, please? Councillor Hamlin. Council, are there any questions or comments before I call the vote? I want to thank Councillor Jeffrey for her continued hard work and representation on behalf of our residents at FCM. It has been an extremely busy year, and having your voice there has been very critical, I think, to the outcome of some of the relief measures that have been put in place. So I will call the vote then. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. And that brings us to item 11, notices of motion. And Councillor Hamlin, I think you have a notice of motion.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll read it in. That council submit an invitation for a representative from the Rural Ontario Medical Program and the local family health organization to provide comments regarding the current and future capacity of Collingwood's primary health system at the Strategic Initiatives Committee of Council meeting scheduled for May 3rd, 2021, or so soon thereafter as is convenient.
Thank you. And that'll be dealt with next Monday, April 26th, council meeting.
Thank you.
Are there any other notices of motion, council? Seeing none, I am a Rogers client, so my text to you, Deputy Mayor, did not go through. I don't know if you have a county report for us today or if you'd like to go for to next meeting.
I don't have a specific report, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And we'll obviously have an update as to it relates to your motion after our next county meeting. And that's your motion as it relates to the JI.
Yes. So that motion was passed at the committee of the whole last Tuesday. And our next meeting is a week tomorrow. So maybe we'll schedule an update, perhaps Clerk Amos for the SIC meeting on May 3rd, I guess it will be next. And I saw two cards go up. These questions for the Deputy Mayor on the county. Okay, so I've got Councillor McLeod and then Councillor Doherty. Go ahead, Councillor McLeod.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for that riveting county council meeting last Tuesday. And you just couldn't get your thing on the agenda a little earlier. So those of us who were interested in the outcome were stuck watching for hours and hours and hours. I would like to ask, though, as I perused the agenda for that meeting, I noticed that there was some change regarding governance and the big report and so on that many of us were so interested in from the provincial government shortly after after the 2018 election. And I know that Simcoe County had some conversations about what might happen and wanted to have a look at governance in the future. And am I reading that agenda and those minutes correctly when I see that there will be an additional member of county council in the not too distant future, which will be selected from the public by the mayors and deputy mayors who represent us there? Or have I read that incorrectly? I'm happy to be corrected or not corrected, as the case may be, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the deputy mayor.
I will pass that over to the Deputy Mayor. Go ahead.
Thank you. So the governance committee brought forward to the House again a couple of options as it relates to potential for moving forward. And this stems from a review of how we operate from not only from a governance, but from an operational standpoint, in large part because of the report you referred to back in 2018 that was first commissioned by the province under the leadership of Ken Sealing and Michael Fenn, that was then promptly delivered and sealed under Crown seal. In other words, it was shelved. So in the time that's followed, the county, and this was part of it, was to look at the way in which we operate and potentially govern ourselves. And we've done a couple of things. So one is I actually was the one that tabled, and it was passed 32-0, to go back to the province to say, look, it was the taxpayers' money that paid for that particular report. At the very least, we should have an opportunity to review the specifics as it relates to Simcoe County. So time will tell whether or not that report is opened and provided to the county. But in the meantime, there is discussion that stemmed around the role of the warden. And so I think the one thing that we're all in agreement in is that the warden should be a full-time position. The discussion and the debate, and I'll look to the mayor to provide some clarity as well, was whether or not that should be a person who is selected within, i.e. similar to what we do today, where you've got 32 members of the House, people can put forward their name and you have an elected process in which to choose the warden, or whether you go out and you actually have a selection committee similar to if you were filling the position, say, of a CAO, where you would have the House or Council look at candidates that have been already vetted based on various criteria, And then the House would have an opportunity to select a warden based under that criteria. So those were sort of the two directions that we were looking at. And trust me, there was vigorous debate as to which way to go. The other part of the discussion was whether or not to then downsize the House from the current 32 to 16. And I think at this point, it still remains at the 32. That was part of the discussion around and why I requested through a motion. It was actually tabled by Harry Hughes from Oro Medonte, but to go back to the province and say, look, we're kind of struggling with this discussion, and you hired experts at the taxpayers' expense to come up with a report, and we'd like an opportunity to see that report. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we continue to kick the proverbial football down the road, and one way of hoping to come to a conclusion would be to have that that document unsealed and provided to us. But at the same time, we did come to some consensus as it relates to how we'd like to see the House move forward, and that was sent back to the governance committee within the county or within council, and they'll be forthcoming with another report or an amended report at some point in the near future. And I'll just make sure I'm somewhat accurate in that. Am I, Mayor Saunderson?
I think you're 100% accurate that there was also some discussion about whether they would elect the warden at large throughout the entire county. And it was felt that the costs and the cumbersome nature of trying to coordinate that type of an election and to have people campaign on that broad geographical basis was more difficult. And so we scoped it to an appointed process that the mayors or the deputy mayors outlined. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Doherty, you had a question as well.
Thank you. Yes, through you to the Deputy Mayor. I noted that there was discussion at the council meeting in regard to our landfill facilities and capacity, and that there were some, I felt, words of some concern as to what we were going to do when those facilities were completely filled up. However, I was surprised that there was no discussion about the Circular Economy Act and the fact that full producer responsibility is slated to come into play in 2025. Which is just 2.5 years from now. And I'm just wondering how that is figuring into the conversation, because to me, there was quite a disconnect there.
Yeah, I think just it's preface that, I mean, this I think is a really good topic of discussion and probably could form the substance of a major report. There were a number of reports about waste management, Councillor Doherty, and the recycling program. So you're referring to one. I think there was 2 or 3 on the table that meeting as well as previously. But so I looked at the deputy mayor. I think it's a big topic and probably could be the topic of a full report.
I think point very well taken. And in fact, actually, there was some heated conversation to the issue as a whole in terms of responsibility and whose responsibility. And that was in large part because you're right, to your first part of your question or comment, we are approaching some capacity issues. The town of Collingwood, the landfill on the 10th concession, within this decade will come to a close. So, you know, that'll have an impact not only on our local residents in terms of their ease of use, but it'll have obviously an impact on how the county operates, because that is a specific facility not only for you and I and our fellow residents to go, but they use it on a consistent basis in terms of actually bringing in waste material that they collect at the street on our behalf. So that and the issue that you raise and a whole host of other issues led to then a conversation where we as a county council really need a dedicated workshop to provide One, a refresh as to where we're at. Two, to really look at our roles and our responsibilities as it relates to waste management, because I think there are some differing views as to whether it's an issue that is a county, and what I mean by county, that we keep our waste here, or do we ship it out of county, i.e. Michigan. What's right, what's wrong, and what's the long-term implication? And so that resulted in a commitment between county council and staff to host a future, and when I say future, near future, workshop dedicated to waste management, because they are very significant. And specific to the issue you've raised, we're up against the clock, so to speak, in terms of a deadline. Yeah.
Follow up, Councillor Doherty.
No, thank you very much. I will continue to follow it with interest, and I will remind you that I am on the AMO Waste Management Task Force, and if I can offer any assistance or get any information, I'd be very happy to do that.
Thank you, and I think we'll keep that in mind. And as I said, there was a number of reports that we received at the last meeting, plus before that, talking about waste diversion. There are some success stories there, but ultimately the landfills are coming. The 3 remaining landfills in Simcoe County have finite lifespans, so it's an issue that we're going to have to deal with. So that brings us to 13, older deferred business, 13.1. Is there any older deferred business, Council? Seeing one. With 13.2 under other business, 13.2.1, we have an EPCOR files update from CAO Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Around mid-March, Council asked me to review some files that are now available to the town under the sale agreement of the electrical distribution utility to EPCOR. And so I went through the appropriate channels with EPCOR to get access, and was able to recently review the files in hard copy. I only had several hours in there and just wanted to take a look at the volume and topics. So when we did also talk a bit about confidentiality, there are some confidentiality provisions set out in the contract. And we also had to work around the COVID challenges, of course, in entering the building. There was a lot more than 27 boxes, and not counting things that I thought obviously seemed to relate to Collingwood's ongoing water work. There was about 37 drawers of vertical file cabinets, 191 bankers' boxes of paper, 151 small receipt boxes, which probably are of less interest, but one never knows, and about 100 binders or bound material, those kind of ones that have the plastic spines that you can make up at your workplace. And I'm still waiting for some of the electronic files. Still waiting for all of the electronic files that were being assembled by the staff. So not all of those were, topics that may be of great interest, but I would say, somewhere between, maybe 10 and 50% of that volume probably had topics that may be of interest. And I anticipate recommending next steps to council in the next couple of weeks. But I just wanted to give you an update because I know there was some interest in finalizing that work and moving forward with any decisions that council would like to make based on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Council, any questions or comments on that update? Seeing none, is there any other business? I've got Councillor Jeffrey, the Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Comey. Go ahead, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Just two things. The first one is that the early bird registration for FCM's virtual conference, as referenced in Councillor Berman's motion, is imminent, April 23rd. So if you're interested in attending that virtual conference, the early bird is a good deal. And then my second item is I'd like to ask for a staff report through Acting Executive Director Culver through the Parks and Rec Department with respect to the feasibility of the town assisting Collingwood minor hockey with their rebranding costs, which I understand would be in the majority of replacing the jerseys. And it's really important for us in the town as we move forward in our unity and diversity leadership in terms of having something more reflective of our community in that sport. And I would like to ask for that report.
Okay, did you provide notice in advance, Councillor Jeffrey? I think maybe what we're looking for is then a notice of motion to go on the floor that we can deal with next week.
Okay, my thought process, Your Worship, was that I wouldn't do a specific motion. I would just simply look for a staff report for the feasibility. If you want me to go to a motion to support it, absolutely, I will give notice of that.
Okay, well, I looked at Executive Director Culver. I know there's been discussions and there are numbers to the rebranding, and it was certainly well in motion this year. Unfortunately, the season was cut short, but Director Culver, maybe you can just give an update on the status and what's been done so far, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, we intend to. We will bring forward a report. We have had some conversations with minor hockey, and I think prior to budget for 2022, we can return with a report that will hopefully provide an assistive strategy for minor hockey, helping with their turnover of jerseys. So it's definitely doable, and we're happy to do it. Happy to provide that.
Okay, well, it sounds to me like that's in the works. Anyway, Councillor Jeffrey, if that assists, and it would come back as part of the budgeting process for 2022.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, that is very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I just, very quickly, if we could, I just wanted to go back to the agenda tonight, item 9.2, the Standing Committee report, the Corporate and Community Services report, and specifically PRC 2021-02, the Rainbow Crosswalk. This was obviously passed unanimously at Corporate and Community Services. There's been good reporting on this particular issue in the paper and other means, but I just, it didn't get pulled and it wasn't commented on, and I just thought it was worthy of noting. We need things to lift us up in these days, and I think this is a fantastic story. It's such a small thing in terms of the square footage and the budget cost, but the macro implications in terms of uplifting a community, showing who we are in terms of our acceptance, our tolerance, our diversity, and ensuring that those within our community who identify as LGBTQ feel welcome and secure and home. These are all important things. And what I think is nice in terms of a sign of the time, I recognize that we're not the first community to have a rainbow walk, but when this was proposed and throughout the process, I know I'm probably wrong, but I didn't hear any negativity. What I heard was an outpouring of positivity, that this was something that the community was fully in support of. And when you look at the crosswalk, the crosswalk, when you look at the public art project that is for the space between our library and the Tremont, and just to take it one step further, 2 Sundays ago at the AGM for the BIA, Dr. John Miller, on behalf of the Rainbow community, and a planner, Lori DiGastino, I hope that I pronounced her name correctly, gave an overview of the Pride celebrations that will take place this summer here at Collingwood. And when you put all 3 of those together, As I said, we're short on good news stories, and this is a fantastic news story. And I'm proud, it was not a recorded vote, but I'm proud that this was received unanimously and is supported unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well said. And Dean, did you want to provide an update? I know that the Pride Club is contributing a significant portion of the funds to the installation of the Rainbow Crosswalk.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. And I want to say thanks to the Deputy Mayor for bringing up this subject, because I'd actually hoped within a busy day to speak to it just briefly, because I think as council is aware by now, the journey towards inclusion or creating a more inclusive community is a long learning path. So after we had presented in conjunction with the Rainbow Club, the idea of the Rainbow Crosswalk, we became known that the rainbow flag is not inclusive of all members of LGBTQ2+. And so we actually spent a lot of time over the past 2 weeks working on whether there needed to be a counterposition for the crosswalk, or what strategies might be to make sure that we're moving towards inclusion. And so essentially it was agreed that that we would take a look at, with Public Works and Engineering's cooperation, we would take a look at all of the intersections, all of the crosswalks in that intersection over time, and looking at the opportunities to create essentially an intersection of inclusion, is to make sure that we're not leaving out any member of the community that might not feel represented by the rainbow styling of the crosswalk. So it's a good opportunity for us to pilot something. It's a good opportunity for us to test out the methodology for applying a crosswalk of this nature. It's a good opportunity for us to continue this story and continue our path of learning into the future. So I'm glad to have the Deputy Mayor gave me the opportunity to mention that, because it was important to note. Again, we have a really good relationship with the Rainbow Club, and it was a very thoughtful and considered approach over the last 2 weeks to figure out where we should go from here.
Thank you, Dean. Any follow-up, Deputy Mayor? Okay. Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the man of the hour, Acting Director Culver, Acting Executive Director Culver. I have a couple questions, requests for updates, please, on the very important topic of diversity, which we've addressed in many forms. I was wondering if you had an update on when council might be anticipating diversity training.
Director Culver, Executive Director Culver.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, so we've done a lot of activity, and I know that council has sort of been waiting, and again, I can't apologize enough for the delays that take us to where we are today. It's just very busy times. It's the only explanation I have. Having said that, council should be aware that in conjunction with the Health and Wellbeing Roundtable, and an anti-Black racism subcommittee that was struck from that committee, from that roundtable, an anti-Black racism organizational assessment tool was developed in consultation with Michelle Newton, who's a representative from an organization called Making Change. And it's to be used by leadership, staff, and senior leaders for evaluating our existing policies against 5 framework categories, which hopefully helps us to identify what policies are missing and what policies need to be strengthened in order to ensure that we are following an anti-Black racism approach to all of our internal work as well. We're also, as of last week, we were finishing up some discussions with a gentleman named Michael Etherington. He is an Indigenous relations consultant with family roots and heritage stemming from James Bay, Ontario, and he's a member of the Fort Albany First Nation. He's a proud representative of Meshko Cree, and we're working with him to establish a 2 to 3 hour session that council will be invited to. We hope that all council members will attend as part of the training that they committed to. He will be speaking to messages and experiences growing up both on reserve and off reserve, and the training that he provides shares an insight of the barriers, misconceptions, and assumptions within communities that can perpetuate a narrative that's not reflective of Indigenous people. It's information that we should have as we move through policy work. And although his lens is Indigenous in origin, attendees will leave with a broader sense of inclusion and awareness overall. This is one of the reasons why we were drawn to Michael and his style and his message, is that although like I mentioned, the lens is Indigenous, really a lot of his message can be applied to how we observe people of different ethnic origins overall, and ways that inclusion can be manifested. Beyond that, staff have also been working on implementing the HR download system. So that's our learning platform, our training platform that staff use. And we've been vetting and working with the source company on those training needs. Interview biases training has already been implemented. In fact, CEO Skinner and myself recently undertook the training in conjunction with one of our recruitment interviews. And that was sort of our test. And I think going forward, it will be applied to all recruitment. So all recruiters, all interviewers will have to take this training, which helps to establish a bit of a perspective on biases that might be brought into play. But council should also look forward to the rollout of other applicable modules that are alongside staff, which would include things like workplace diversity and inclusion training, unconscious bias training, and gender and sexual diversity training. And there's others that we're still vetting, again, through a bit of a process and trying to find the right modules and tools to put in front of council. But all that work's been going on in the background, and you should start to see messages coming to your inbox soon.
Thanks, Dean. Follow up, Councillor Comey.
Well, that's a great update. I appreciate that. But while Director Culver's on the line, and speaking of good news, it looks like there's a lot of dirt being moved around over at Fisher Field, and I don't think the public's had an opportunity to hear a public update on that. And just as a side note, I'm not sure the project still exists on Engage Collingwood, so maybe this would be a great way to get some updates out to the community. Thank you.
Executive Director Culver.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Actually, we've been reviewing the Engage tool, and actually we're moving back towards replacing some of those projects on Engage so that they can be tracked. It's been a little bit challenging, obviously, with COVID to try and have stuff that's shifting constantly. But we did break ground at Fisher Field, and servicing parts are underway. It is a 28-week program. It's a long program to build this facility. But I've mentioned before that servicing is a challenge, and there are other things to be considered. So we'll be really, really happy to see it completed in about 28 odd weeks, so around September. But at the end of the day, small blessings are that soccer is planning for a reduced activity on the fields this year anyway. So this is the year when we'll have the least amount of impact as we kind of navigate around them with construction and whatnot. So, but yeah, very excited to see it underway, and after all this time, and really will be excited when it's complete.
Thank you, Dean. Anything else, Councillor Comey?
No, that's great. Just, of course, obviously a huge thanks to Director Culver and his staff. It was a very long journey, and they did some wonderful grant applications, and they did some great public input, and they did a lot of updates based on that public input. So it's really a great narrative for us as a community. And I think I agree. Maybe the best outcome of a longer lead time is it's right now we're not even allowed soccer. So the community will absolutely celebrate it. And a huge thank you to him and all those involved. Thank you.
All right, Council, I think that brings us to the end of other business. I did not see any other cards up. So that brings us to item 14.1, which is the in-camera. And the motion reads as follows. Whereas the clerk hereby concurs the reasons for the in-camera session have been duly reviewed and considered, and the matters are authorized under the exception provisions to conduct a closed session in accordance with the Municipal Act prior to proceeding into closed session. Therefore, be it resolved that this council proceeds in camera in order to address the matter pertaining to 1, the security of the property of the town or local board, which is item B. 2, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the town or a local board. Those relates to items A and B. 3, the receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, both items A and B. 4, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value. That's item B. And 5, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, and that is item B. And the items for discussion are A, 3 LPAT matters, and B, servicing allocation framework. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Berman, the Deputy Mayor. Are there any questions or comments before I call the vote, Council? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Council, it's now 12 minutes to 8. We'll take a break and reconvene at 8:05. And I'm just going to look to the clerk. We're using the same channel, or do we have a distinct link? We're using this same channel?
Correct.
All right. And so then we will meet back, Council, at 8:05 for the in-camera session. We'll see you then. Thank you. How are we doing, Stephanie?
It's just connecting. Should be just a couple more minutes.
Okay.
You're live now.
Thank you. All right, Council, we'll resolve into open session, and the motion is be it resolved that Council rise from in camera and return to public session at 10:53 p.m. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Doherty and Councillor Berman, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is the confirmatory bylaw. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2021-19, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special meeting of council held April 7. That's not right. April 19. And the it's 2 confirmatory bylaws. Council held April 7, 2020, and the regular meeting of council held April 19, 2021 be enacted and passed this 19th day of April 2021. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor McLeod and Councillor Berman, all in favor? That is passed unanimously, and we're looking for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. That was a busy night.